Hello and welcome to ChoirSuccess. Stay tuned to hear about an extremely innovative choir and how they are structured for success. Joining me from Savannah, Georgia is Emily Burch, and she is the founder and leader of Rise Ensemble and the Rise organization. And if you appreciate us coming to you with content for choir leaders, please don't forget to like this video and then subscribe for future updates. Emily, how wonderful to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. This is fun to talk about. What a cool platform and a cool organization that you are highlighting, all these new ways of doing choir.
We're having a lot of fun. It's been a great project, and I'm really enjoying it. So a little bit about yourself. I know that you're the founder of Rise, and we're going to get into that in some detail. But what do you do in terms of your regular occupation?
I am the visiting professor of music and coordinator of music education at the University of South Carolina in Aiken. So I teach all the future educators over there, all the future music educators, and then I design classes that count as your music elective or your fine arts credit, and they involve things like history of rock and roll or history of film music or non-traditional musics and all sorts of really fun stuff. So it's a really cool job, and I love my students.
Oh, fantastic. And so, and we'll figure out how Rise fits in with that. But for starters, what does Rise actually stand for? It is an acronym, right?
Yes, it's an acronym. So Rise was founded in 2016, and it stands for Revolutionizing and Inspiring Singing Excellence. So as someone who grew up singing in choirs especially, and then found children's choirs right before I graduated with my undergrad, I heard a couple different children's choirs at the ACDA conference in Miami in 2007. And I just fell absolutely in love with children's choirs. I had no idea that was a thing. I'd grown up singing in church choirs.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, so I fell in love with that and realized that not only did that carry me through becoming a better teacher in the classroom, because I taught in the public school here in Savannah for a while, it then gave me a whole new way to pursue music and to teach music. And when I was looking at what was missing in our community to fill the gaps, I realized that choiring had taught me how to have conversations, how to be a leader, and so many other what we call today, I think, career readiness skills, that I wanted to create something that was revolutionizing and inspiring everything in life, but through singing excellence. So yes, singing brings us together, but through singing, we learn about socializing and serving.
Ah, really excellent. And actually, you're getting ahead of one of my future questions, which is around of course, every choir, every organization really has to provide value to their various stakeholders, including in the case of a choir, their singers and a bunch of other groups. And what I understand is that the concept of value in Rise for the singers who are involved is quite different and a little more flexible than a typical choir. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I believe you've had my dear, dear friend and co-author, Alex Gardner, on your show as well. And we just wrote the book, Business of Choir. It's published by GIA. But it all starts from that stem. What's the value? Why does the singer want to be a part of the organization? Why does your community need your organization? What is the purpose of choir? And you and I can talk what the value is musically for days on days on days, because we know what that value of music is. When finding what was missing in our community, I think putting value behind, yes, singing and singing excellently, that has value, but there's also all these other things that have value. And so we created a model that, like you said, is flexible. So if singers if they want to do barbershop, we flip and we create a barbershop ensemble. We have a group of 3 soprano altos that want to do kind of like the Lennon sisters and the Andrews sisters. They're kind of interested in that. And one of our singers has been arranging and writing her own music in that style. So now we have a little trio that meets once a week. So we created a model that can be sustainable but super flexible based on the needs of our community.
Right, okay. And so when you get right down to it, is it that there's a main ensemble and that group always meets, and then there are kind of other projects that are around the outside that come and go?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And our quote main ensemble is typically a soprano alto ensemble, because I approached it from the skills that I felt I needed in the business world, having taught in the school system. And then I left the school system to work for corporate America for a music curriculum where I traveled all over the country. And I realized really quickly, I can teach all day long, but I don't know how to have a meeting and eat lunch at the same time.
And so you had some business skills that you had to figure out.
Right. And so I wanted to teach those to the singers. I thought, cool, they love singing too. That brings us together. Let's learn how to ask leading questions so we can walk into a room of complete strangers and not feel uncomfortable. Let's learn how to dine together and talk and eat.
Right,
It all
right.
became part of like the underlying current of that main organization. And because we offer so many opportunities to engage in conversation, these little spin-off projects happen every year and they're always different. And that's really fun for me.
Right. It occurs to me now thinking about it that if you have a different offerings all the time, how do you, I don't know if you recruit to find people to come in. Well, you don't. All right. So if you were going to recruit, it might be hard to present that like, well, this year we're doing this, or you know, it's not always the same message you would have, and so there would be a challenge there. But if you don't recruit, then you don't have to worry about that. So where do your singers come from?
We rely a lot on the word of mouth and we recruit through just conversation. Again, we're not looking to become a huge organization because we would lose that really intimate conversation piece. And a lot of the things we do, like we pile in a 15-passenger van and go on college visits every spring.
Ah, right.
So much fun. But we can't surpass a certain number because then we can't all fit in the same van. And who in the universe is going to not want to be in the 15-passenger van?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I want to be with all of them. I can't put any of them in another car. I mean, part of the fun of our road trips is car karaoke. Like, it's like
Yeah, for
literally
sure.
hours. Anyway, I love them so much. So I think part of what we communicate to the outside bubble is that singing can revolutionize and inspire every aspect of your life. And
Yeah.
whatever is offered is offered. And so like we have an adult ensemble that started during COVID and we met every week and the adults loved it because it was socialization and new music. But when we came out of COVID and things weren't as virtual anymore, the time commitment of a weekly adult rehearsal just became too much for the people that were choosing to be a part of that organization. So we didn't get rid of it, but it's flipped to a workshop style choir where they come together once for an extended period. They learn everything. They get all sorts of rehearsal tools. They get access to me during designated SATB office hours, all sorts of things. And then they just show up before the concert, have one more quick rehearsal, and sing. So
Yes.
it's not like the adult choir has gone away. And because it's just an organization of me and one other running the thing, if someone writes and says, hey, I'm looking for an experience for my tenor bass. Cool. We don't have a lot for that age group, but we have this opportunity. However, if you find 3 friends, we can start one.
Right, right. Yeah, excellent.
And that
Excellent.
becomes the easy piece of the puzzle.
I actually think that that kind of innovation in even just basic scheduling of how things are going to work is going to be really important going forward because really society has changed and many adults, speaking from an adult perspective, just don't have that weekly time slot open all the time. Personally, I find myself with, okay, I've got one thing every night, and so if anything happens on one of those nights, I got to not go to something, right? It's a bit like that. In fact, I remember for quite a while, I wanted to sing with a particular barbershop ensemble. I live in Vancouver, BC, and I would go down to Seattle because it was basically every second weekend, and that's manageable, right? Whereas every Tuesday for me would have been very difficult.
Totally agree. But that took you seeking that organization out and finding out that you had an interest in that. And so it's kind of where we start. We created, like you said, some type of, umbrella organization that anything can happen underneath it as long as it aligns to the mission that it's revolutionizing and inspiring singing excellence,
Right.
whatever that might look like.
Yeah. So you said something interesting to me when we were preparing for this interview, and you were saying how in your professional life, teaching people how to teach music to students, it's really important to stay grounded in how do you do that, right? And kind of keep your fingers in the business of talking to kids. Otherwise, I guess it would. I mean, the generations change, and so, what are some of the things that you have learned from teaching or from founding and running this ensemble that help you to teach teachers how to teach the generation of today?
Such a great question. And I do think that as a teacher of teachers, I love teaching so much. I can't imagine not having what we call the lab experience. And
Right.
so sometimes I remind my choir, hey, yeah, we are revolutionizing and inspiring singing excellence, but we're also revolutionizing and inspiring teaching excellence. And I'll tell them, hey, I want to try this new thing I heard, or I did this research study and here were the outcomes. Can we see if it works on you too? And
Mhm.
it's very like we sign all the paperwork at the beginning, and everybody knows that this is my laboratory choir for testing teaching strategies and rehearsal strategies and just conversation strategies. What works when you're facilitating a room of 12 to 18-year-olds? And and what
Yeah,
doesn't,
sure.
because it's going to
Yeah.
be different in what works for all the different ages. But anyway, that's kind of where it started. I think that I want to always be in that space. And so I have found some incredible rehearsal techniques that work. I have found some that do not work and do not resonate, but might work someplace else. I get to test out lots of cool warm ups or sequencing or scaffolding. It's really, really fun. And then I also get to teach them how to do what I do. So our spring concert is always conducted by our high schoolers. And so it's really fun to watch the process. I do the initial teaching and scaffolding, so notes and rhythms and most of the musicality are in their brains. But as we
Hmm.
get through the rehearsal process, the person who has chosen that song, because they get to choose, comes up and starts helping during the rehearsal process with their conducting and their gesture and their facial expressions and what do you want here and how do you want that final consonant to sound. And it's really awesome to see their transformation, then watching in the fall what I'm asking for with my hands.
Oh, sure.
Just
Wonderful.
like teaching teachers, as they start to see the process, they start to make connections. Such as my students this morning in class, I always ask, how was your weekend? Were there any transfers to music ed? And they had all attended this one concert, and they had some thoughts on repertoire selection and performancing, what was engaging and what wasn't engaging, what was received and what wasn't received, why, what they can take away. And I think those transferable moments are what make you a human that's never dull or never
Right.
stagnant.
Absolutely. And I think it's very, very healthy to conceive of life and these projects as a series of experiments rather than as a kind of winner take all, fail or succeed routine, right? Like try things and see what works. And it sounds like you're all over that.
Well, I'm glad you said that though, because after our first year of being founded, a professor from Georgia Southern approached me and said, I'd like to do a research study on why people join community choirs. And this study ended up getting published and presented at the International Symposium for Research in Music Education in Battle, England. Just such
Hmm.
a cool project. But he sat down with every singer that was currently involved, every singer that was previously involved, every parent or caregiver, and then people in the community that had been impacted by our ensemble, and asked a series of questions. And what's so interesting was, at the time we were just throwing paint up on the wall. I mean, we haven't stopped throwing paint up on the wall. Let's be real. We are
Yeah.
constantly throwing paint up on the wall to see what sticks and
Hmm.
creating a different type. We don't have a color palette in mind. We're just tossing paint up there. But at the time we didn't know that was going to be our artistic expression. We thought we
Right.
needed to create a wall that was navy blue or maroon or something. We thought we were trying to go for a single color wall, and we found through that research study so many pieces of why people chose to be in our organization, and a lot of it revolved around the tossing of the paint and seeing what sticks.
Fantastic. And just one for the audience, if there's somebody that you'd like me to talk to or a topic you'd like me to cover, just write it in the comments below and we will see what we can do for you. And so finally, one of the interesting things to me about RISE is the way that it's structured. How there's kind of an outreach arm and the the chorale, I guess, the RISE chorale. And you're the architect of that structure. Why did you choose that and how is it working for you?
Thank you for calling me an architect. That's like the coolest title ever. So in 2016, when I was designing all of this, I realized that in my prior nonprofit community choir organization where I had served as the director of education, I hadn't really ever learned how to read a P&L or how to create and process a budget that would make sense to an accountant or how all the tax stuff worked behind the scenes. I had never learned that. It was not something taught in school. No beef to any of that. It's now in Alex and mine's book, The Business of Choir, because there's just
Right.
not enough
Hmm.
time to teach everything. So I took some classes on Harvard has this awesome online program where you get a preliminary introduction to accounting, analytics, and finance for managers.
Hmm.
Super awesome. I learned about accounting and P&Ls and just limitless knowledge. And through that, I made the decision that I want to have an organization that is an LLC. And that means that it's a for-profit ensemble. We are selling choir. And the reason I chose that is because of the pivotability. There's no board involved. We did have a panel of advisors until we started our nonprofit branch. We had a whole panel of advisors from all over the city that I would meet with twice a year and say, here's what we're doing. Is it meeting the needs of the community? What are we missing?
Right.
But they had no stake in the game. They were just a panel of advisors that we made sure we still had a pulse on the community. And that was a choice for me. So we created the LLC because you don't report to a board. There are a few less items of paperwork, and ultimately they're paying for the product of choir.
Yeah.
And so
Which is
that's
great.
why the chorale itself is an LLC. I don't have to get it approved to purchase music. I don't have to get
And
it approved to go on tour.
LLC, for the global audience, is essentially a for-profit corporation, limited liability corporation. Yeah.
okay.
There's lots, like
And
if you have a best friend, you can do a partnership, you can
Right,
label it
yeah.
as a limited entity. None of that really matters. There's some documentation, and every state has, if you go to your state corps page, like I'm in Georgia, they have a step-by-step process of what needs to happen. Like first you get your name approved, and then you submit for the license, and then you explain why and what you fit into. And the LLC process is a fraction of the time.
Oh, yeah. The reason that caught my attention is because I think most children's choirs that I run into in my regular life as the CEO of Groupenizer are themselves nonprofits, right? There's no distinction, but your outreach arm is a completely separate nonprofit entity.
So we did the idea the whole time was to keep the choir as a separate LLC that I literally own the choir. No one can ever take it away from me. If I want
Right.
to, I'll sell it. But it's
And-
really flexible and malleable.
And that's probably important because of so many times that I've heard of essentially choirs being taken away from people because, you know, a group of parents would take over the board, and then like it's a horror story that I think has gone around. So it must happen sometimes, but that can't happen to Rise because it's something that you personally own.
Right. And so this nonprofit, I knew all along that not everyone will have access to a pay for choir experience.
Yeah.
A pay to play experience doesn't meet my personal goal of diversity, inclusion, equity, awareness, and belonging. And so
Right.
we created the nonprofit. It's has the name of Rise Outreach because it just was the most encompassing umbrella term that makes sense. I was looking for something. Yes, I wanted an innovative title that didn't use outreach in it, but I didn't have time to walk up to every human in Savannah and say, hey, Rise Outreach, it means ...
Yes,
So Rise Outreach is very clear and simple and gets to the point. We do programming for organizations, community centers, schools that don't have music. We bring in musical programming. We offer what we call sponsored singers, people that would benefit from the Rise Choral experience. We pay a portion of their proceeds based on an application process to become a sponsored singer. And then we offer scholarships for graduating seniors from Rise that are going to college. We give them a scholarship as a thank you for the number of years they worked in Rise.
Right.
And we also give scholarships if people want to go to a summer program or a summer camp, something that will benefit and revolutionize and inspire our musical community because they did it.
Right. Oh, you're just doing so many innovative and fun and wonderful things. I'm so happy that you're on this mission.
Well, thank you for letting me talk about it. I get really excited. It's different, but it works for me and it works for my community. I think that's the biggest takeaway when you listen to everyone's stories. Like Alex was just on your show, and our stories are totally different, and our
Right.
organizations are totally different, like literally opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
But that doesn't devalue either one. It's just what works best for my personality and for my community.
Right, right. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Okay. And thank you for watching. Again, if you'd like to see me cover a topic or speak to an individual, please let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. My name is Tom Metzger, and I hope your day is full of singing.